Hi. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Okay, we're here to greet and say hi to everybody again. I'm not very good at this. I don't usually run meetings. I usually take notes. And Jennifer has agreed to come and talk to us today. And I found everything that she told me so interesting. She's been a big help with my mom. So I hope you'll learn something extra today. Can't be. So welcome, Jennifer, and thanks for coming.
Perfect. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Anne, for organizing this. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Um, so before I start, if any of you, like, you can have the slides. I know it's being recorded, so it could be watched later. But if you ever want to reach out to me and you have questions and you want to have a phone consult, and I'm more than happy to do that at any time. So just please know that that's always available. Whatever you're okay and comfortable with to share here. If I can support you and help you, I will. But if you want to have a private conversation at any time, and that can include evenings and weekends as well too. So just know that that's available. So thank you, everyone. I did a different bit of a slideshow today. So let's see how it goes and hopefully it flows. I just needed to kind of update it. Um, so yes, my name is Jennifer Abbott. I am a registered hearing instrument practitioner and founder of Hear at Home Mobile Hearing Clinic that I started back in 2009. So going on to 16 years now. So Hear at Home is the first 100% mobile hearing clinic in BC, I think in Canada actually. Just gonna put this other plug in. So the reason I say 100% mobile, where I'm going with this is there used to be some clinics like the bigger chains that would go in and do a hearing test. And if there was hearing loss, perhaps fit hearing aids. But then you wouldn't see that clinic anymore. You know, you'd have your hearing aids, but then they'd say, okay, no, you got to come to the clinic. Well, that kind of defeated the purpose because usually when I go into a care home, there's no coming into the clinic. It's always me going there. So that's what I mean with the 100% mobile hearing clinic. Uh, so here at home, going on 16 years, we have a brick and mortar location in North Vancouver that I opened up 3 years ago, but basically travel all around Greater Vancouver. When I first started, I honestly thought I was just going to start on the North Shore. I thought I was going to do North and West Vancouver. But what would happen is people would find out about the service and they'd call and I'd hear their story. You know, Jennifer, my grandma's in a care home. She's in Richmond. We cannot get her to the clinic. If the taxi comes, the taxi's so rough with her, they can't secure the wheelchair and she's bouncing all over the place. I'm begging you, can you please come to Richmond and see my grandma? So any of those stories, even today when I hear them, even if I set rules saying, I'm not going this far, I'm not taking a ferry, and I will go to Bowen, I'll go to places like that, because I understand the difficulty and the hardship of getting a family member, a loved one to a hearing clinic. So basically, Here at Home goes in and does almost anything that you can have done in the hearing clinic. So I will go in, perform otoscopy. So that's looking in the ears, checking for earwax, checking for anything unusual. And if it's all clear, then I will perform the hearing test. And I can do, depending on someone's cognitive level, I can do a full evaluation. But a lot of times when I go into long-term care, I have to I have to think of what part of the test battery is the most important to give me that information because sometimes people can't go through the full hearing test as well. Uh, about 10, 11 years ago, I got certified as a dementia practitioner as well too, because I do deal with a lot of clients in that age group that have dementia. So I'm going to touch a little bit on hearing loss. If at any time, if any of you have any questions at all, please reach out. And if anyone's watching to see if a hand's raised and I miss it, just go ahead and interrupt me. So we have different types of hearing loss. We have a sensory neural hearing loss, a conductive loss, and a mixed loss. So a sensory neural hearing loss is usually related to presbycusis. Presbycusis is a fancy name for an age-related hearing loss. So basically, the sensory hairs in the inner ear, they just slowly stop working. They just die off. That can be from age, or people that worked in noisy environments, they can damage those hair cells. Um, Now, those hair cells, and when we talk about, whoops, I just want to check something. Bear with me. I just want to make sure. I keep hearing a beeping sound. I don't know if that's the Zoom itself, but I'm going to just be on the safe side and plug this in. So when I talk about a sensory neural hearing loss and those hairs being damaged, they actually slowly start declining as early as 20 years of age. Okay. But we don't really notice anything until about 50 years and 60 and 70 and 80. A conductive hearing loss is when the sound can't get through. So it's conduction, sound. So something's blocking there. So a really common conductive hearing loss is cerumen. Cerumen is earwax. So a lot of people that I'll meet in care homes usually have a mixed loss. So a combination of a sensory neural hearing loss, which is most likely age related, with blockage from earwax. So it's so funny when I think of this talk when I started 16 years ago, and it seemed like so long ago, but we're in 2025, and now 5 years from now, in 2030, 25% of the population will have some degree of hearing loss over age 65. So as we know with the aging population, it's becoming not just hearing loss, anything that we're just starting to see the demands of the aging population. Now, with a hearing loss, as you know, or if you may not have thought of it, but it's an invisible disability. It's not something that we always see, right? You know, um, so I always tell people when they have a hearing loss, especially if they're not wearing hearing aids at any age, because you might in your 50s, 60s be diagnosed with a minor loss and you're not quite ready yet. And I'll tell people, make sure you let people know that you have hearing loss because it's an invisible disability. Um, it's not something that people see, and so they don't always know that's what the issue is. Some people have been misdiagnosed for dementia and also as well because, or cognition issues because they just weren't hearing. One thing I say as well too that I find really important thinking of this invisible disability is if you have a family member and they're going this, I just can't even believe that this is allowed. Say someone's still living at home and you need them to have their cognition tested, right? To see, okay, are they ready for a care home? Are they safe to be at home or not? And they go through the testing. People are going for this testing without wearing hearing aids, or something. Like that's really important. I cannot stress that enough. Like I would never have one of those full assessments without being able to hear properly. So I'm going to talk about it after, but even if you don't have hearing aids, going back to what Anne and I were talking about, which I'll bring up, is even using something like a pocket talker, some sort of amplifier if you're going to have any screening like that. So the link between hearing loss and dementia, can I ask you, have you heard of that? Like it's something uh, that it's just something that's been talked about in the last, well, 10 years ago it was talked about, but not as much as it is now, that there is a link between hearing loss and dementia. Are most of you aware of that? Has it come to your attention? Has it been discussed?
I've
I've heard
noticed it.
about it on the news.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they do mention these things. And, if you're a television watcher, it comes up once in a while. And it concerns me because I have some hearing loss and I am getting forgetful and I'm looking after my husband who's in care. So it's kind of important.
It's really important. And it's interesting. I'm thinking it must be somehow talked about more, because we're getting more calls about it in the clinic. And people have known they've had hearing loss and their husband or their wife are trying to get them to come in. And that's not enough to push them to come in. Yet, as soon as they hear about the possibility of being higher risk for dementia, they're being a bit more proactive in getting their hearing tested.
Yeah.
So just as it says here, hearing loss and dementia are linked through several key pathways, with studies suggesting that untreated hearing loss may increase the risk of cognitive decline and dementia. Now, don't think or don't be scared to think, oh gosh, I have hearing loss, and if I don't get hearing aids, that's it, I'm going to get dementia. That is not true, okay? If you're high risk, then that's when you want to get checked. And it has linked, but doesn't mean that just because you have hearing loss that you're going to get dementia. For those that have, and I'm going to talk about this in one of the next few slides, but when you have an untreated hearing loss, and it affects your ability to process information. So basically, the brain starts to get lazy. And the best example that I could give people, and especially care homes, but care homes started to really see it, and retirement homes too, was during lockdown, during COVID, and people couldn't get the hearing help. They couldn't get whatever. They weren't hearing, they weren't socializing. And you'd see there was one retirement home that I go to on a regular basis, and they have the care side. And they had noticed that a good majority of their residents were going to the care side way faster, because of cognition during COVID than if we didn't have to experience COVID.
Yeah.
So what are the studies showing with hearing loss and dementia? So one is cognitive overload. So hearing loss can lead to greater cognitive load on the brain. So basically, when your hearing is impaired, you're having to work harder to interpret what's being said. So I'll say this to my clients, like when I'm doing a test and I talk about their hearing loss, like someone that has hearing loss and they don't have hearing aids or something to help them hear, they're having to actively listen, like really pay attention. And that's exhausting. Like, I've said to people, I'm like, okay, after I've left after the hearing test, I've been there for an hour and a bit. I know they're exhausted. They've, spent that whole time trying to listen to everything I was saying. And so that's just kind of something that you may see, and you may see with families. Another common one is social isolation. When people have hearing loss, they tend to withdraw and they isolate themselves. So they don't want to participate in events, maybe, or activities. Maybe they've gone to something. Like my grandmother, for example, years ago, she was a very social person, but she would get embarrassed easily. And I think that was the point that pushed her it took her forever to get hearing aids, but she had responded to something incorrectly. And I think there was some laughter, and that was it. She was embarrassed. So that's one thing. Another, if you imagine being in a room and you could hear people talking and laughing and whatever, and you're just watching them, you're watching their facial expressions, but it's like you're on the outside. Yeah, right. You're on the outside looking in, and you just feel like you're just not a part of it. So the social isolation you could see. So brain structures. So hearing loss can change to brain structure. So just areas where we process sound can affect brain function. Reduce cognitive stimulation. So it kind of goes back a bit like what we're talking about, that social isolation. So if you think of hearing as a major source of sensory input that stimulates cognitive processing, so the reduction of that can lead to decreased mental stimulation, which is believed to contribute to cognitive decline. So you're in your kind of like going back to that, you're just into your own quiet world. When I fit someone with hearing aids and I say, okay, it's going to be great just to be able to have these, to be able to communicate and hear speech, you got to hear the ambient sound around you as well too. These are things when we don't have here, we just take for granted. You got to hear the little noises the computer's making, or is the sirens going by outside, or the nurses talking outside my door. Like, just to kind of know what your surrounding is like is so important. And and that gets lost, you know? So those are things that, yeah, if you're suffering with it, if you've experienced it, some of these things you may be able to relate to, or if you haven't yourself, just thinking of family and loved ones. So different signs of hearing loss. Okay. So if you're trying to think, okay, do I have hearing loss or does someone close to me have hearing loss? So it's just common things that some of these things you most likely already know. So struggling to follow in a conversation. The biggest one that we all hear about is struggling to hear in a noisy background. You know, you can hear just fine when you're one-on-one or in a small group, but we're going to all get together at Thanksgiving or whatever holiday you celebrate, and the whole family's there, and that's it. You're just not hearing what or understanding what people are saying. Assuming people are mumbling. And I guess some people absolutely do mumble. Some people speak too quickly. Sometimes we have accents that we're having to listen to, and that can be a challenge. But usually what happens is that person might like it sound to them and in their brain, it sounds like everybody's mumbling, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The TV is loud. We all probably have been in that situation. We know someone that they turn the TV on. You can't watch TV with them,
Yeah.
you know, because it's blaring, or their neighbors are complaining, or even at the care home, you know, you may have to say to someone, because maybe especially if they share a room, that the roommate's complaining because the volume of the TV is too high. And they don't hear that. The person with hearing loss doesn't realize it's super loud. Um, it's kind of fun sometimes when I'll do a hearing aid fitting and I get them all set up. I'll say, okay, let's turn your TV on. So we turn it on and it goes to the last volume they had. And they usually go, oh my gosh, it's this loud. And right away you see it coming down 10 or 15 notches, you know? Difficulty hearing women's and children's voices or birds. You know, like you'll see sometimes hearing clinics advertise that, or, you know, women's, children's, birds have high frequency voices. Not always, but a good majority of the time. So if you have that high frequency hearing loss, it's way difficult to understand that. My grandmother, going back to her, she couldn't really understand my daughter when my daughter was 4 and 5 talking.
Mm-hmm.
I have a client that her mom was my client. She became a client not long after. In her 60s, she was at home, had 2 of her female friends over. It was in the summer. They were having a glass of wine or a cup of tea in their backyard, and the 2 friends started talking about the birds and listening to them. She couldn't hear them. So that was her kind of cue to go, wait, something's not right here, you know? So I share these things with you just so you can think of day to day, because you might be in this situation, or someone close to you is. The sad one, I always find this sad, but it's a reality, and it's family and friends get annoyed. You know, you could see it at times. You could see, um, especially with that person that has hearing loss is in denial and refusing to do anything, and the son or the daughter's talking and they're kind of short with them or angry, and it's just that they're just frustrated, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so that's a giveaway. However, saying that, I have clients, and just recently, but this happens a lot, where they'll call and say, I can't yell at my mom or dad anymore. I feel horrible. They're not meaning to yell, but to others, it sounds like they are. They're worried that people are going to think it's elder abuse because of that, you know, how they're having to speak to their mom or dad, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because they're having to yell.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's something to think about as well too. So sometimes, and I say this again to make sure we don't judge in that way, because you might hear, it might not be you, you might hear someone else talking to their parent, um, or a family member, whoever, spouse, and they're speaking quite loudly, and we might think it's maybe being aggressive, but not necessarily. It could most likely to be because of hearing loss. So if you, going back to this, if you have a hearing loss that you leave untreated, so again, it's an invisible disability. People don't always know that you have a hearing loss. If I'm walking by you and I'm walking with a limp, or I'm walking with a walker, you're going to understand my disability, and you're going to be okay. Okay, let's not go too fast. Let's do whatever. Like, Let's slow it down. Because you're going to be able to see that. But with the hearing loss, you can't always see it. So it's important if you to let people know, and if you know someone has hearing loss, is to think of how you speak to someone. So not speaking too quickly. I know I'm guilty of that at times myself. Even how long I've been doing this, I can speak fast sometimes. Always making sure you face the person when you're speaking to them. You know, when you can read facial expressions and read lips, it makes a huge difference. Not only that, when I'm facing the person I'm talking to, the sound waves are going directly to them. As soon as I turn around and I walk away, families and care staff do this all the time. You can have your mom or dad in the room, and you're walking around. Maybe you're doing it innocently. You're maybe just putting clothes away or doing whatever, but the voice is kind of going all over the place. So that person that has hearing loss has a challenge, you know?
Yeah.
I have some signs in the office, and you could make it yourself. Like, I have hearing loss. Please face me and speak clearly. You know, just little reminders like that that you can put up in a room just to remind people, you know.
Mhm.
Okay, so going back to this ability to process information. So the brain starts to get lazy when you leave a hearing loss untreated. And the sad thing that I wish that was discussed more that people don't realize is when I talk about your ability to process information and the brain gets lazy. So a lot of times we could do speech testing, right? So we test to see um, how you can understand words. And people that score between 80 and 100%, we know, okay, they're going to do quite well with hearing aids. Now, as those years go on and they haven't been treated, that score gets lower and lower. So I have some clients that have, say, 20% speech understanding. I have to say to them, yes, you probably need hearing aids, but the reality is you're still only going to understand about 20%, you know, or if it's 50%. People don't understand that. They think, well, I'll get more expensive hearing aids. The hearing aids aren't processing the information in your brain. The hearing aids are making things loud enough where you need them to be loud at all the different frequencies. Okay. We hear and understand through our brain. Okay. So our ears collect the sound, send the signal to the brain, but then it's up to the brain to process the information. People seem to think it's the hearing aids and they'll blame it on hearing aids a lot of times, you know, and that's really something important to understand. And especially even for caregivers. Um, I've met people before. They think, oh, these people. I got to get one of the seniors uh, activity centers. The activity coordinator there once thought, you know, Joe can't. He's not understanding anything, and these hearing aids aren't very good. But then we found out later, Joe's got really poor speech discrimination. You know, he's never really going to understand. It's up to us and how we communicate with him. Nothing's going to get better. And sometimes it gets off the point. Something to think about. Only people that have hearing loss can wear hearing aids. Once your hearing gets so bad and kind of off the chart, that's when they'll look at you for a cochlear implant. Okay. I'm not going to touch on it too much, but cochlear implants, I didn't realize this until, I don't know, 8 years ago. Cochlear implants will be done on any age. It's not necessarily if you're not too old for a cochlear implant, as long as you're healthy. So just something to think about if someone's hearing loss is so bad that they can no longer wear hearing aids, cochlear implants are an option. They're only an option when hearing aids do not work anymore. So going back to that ability to process information and understanding that some people can hear and they'll say, I can hear you. You don't need to speak any louder. In fact, don't raise your voice anymore. I just can't understand you. That's the difference. And sometimes that person doesn't know to say they can't understand you. They actually say they can't hear you, right? But really they're trying to say, I just can't understand you. And the mistake that we tend to make when someone can't understand is we keep speaking louder, but they're still not understanding you. So what you have to do in that situation, and it's not easy, but it's actually really good brain exercise for us, is try to word the question differently. So whatever you're asking, just think of a different way to ask the question. And sometimes usually the second time they can get it, or the third time. But just to be aware of that. But that's what happens when hearing loss can go untreated. But sometimes it just happens no matter what. I've seen people that have worn hearing aids for years. Their health is declining. Their hearing's getting worse. And their speech understanding is just becoming harder, So just important to kind of understand this. So an untreated hearing loss obviously affects quality of life because going back to that isolation, being around people. And the reason I put Helen Keller there, so all of you probably know who Helen Keller was. She was deaf and she was blind, and she has lots of famous quotes. People used to ask her all the time, if you can choose your hearing or your vision, what would you choose? And a lot of people, even myself before being in this industry, I thought, oh, vision. I couldn't imagine not being able to see my daughter. But what Helen Keller explained, how she explained it, is your vision will connect you to things, but your hearing will connect you to people. Okay. So right now I can close my eyes, cover my eyes, and not see any of you. And I can still do this talk. You can ask questions, I can answer them. You could tell me something funny and I can laugh. I can still be a part of this group and everything that's going on. Okay. But if I can't hear you and I can only see you, it kind of like goes back to what we were talking about a few slides back, where you're in the room, you see everyone talking, laughing, communicating, and you're like an outsider looking in. So those are issues that people could face, quality of life as well as cognition as well too, with leaving a hearing loss untreated. So if you're dealing with this for yourself or you're dealing with someone, and I'm kind of relating lots of stuff to being in a care home. So someone's not hearing, and you think, okay, what do I do? So the first thing to do is check for cerumen, so earwax, basically. You do see a lot of the older, well, okay, it always used to be the older population. Now you're seeing young ones. We're getting the 20-year-olds coming in to remove wax because they're all wearing the earbuds or something in their ears, right?
Yeah.
So, but you do see it with the older population. And a lot of times it's because you're wearing hearing aids and earwax is meant to come out of the ears naturally throughout the day, and it doesn't. However, you also see some that don't wear hearing aids, but they've accumulated wax over the years and it's just been built up for however many years and needs to come out. So if every care home is different, but if at the care home there's a resident doctor or a nurse or someone that can look in the ears with an otoscope, check for earwax. See how that goes. If you get the earwax removed and the person's hearing, I'll probably say in a care home, they're going to maybe hear a bit better, but they're probably still going to have hearing loss because there's a certain age group. I don't think anyone yet over 80 has had normal hearing that I've tested over the years. Okay. So chances are there's still most likely going to be some hearing loss. So then the next thing you want to do, so you could do a combination of it, then schedule a hearing test. Just so you have a better idea and you have a understanding, and also even understanding the type of hearing loss. Like, so remember when I said, when you do the speech testing and you see someone that they've got low speech scores, they're 50%, 40%, if they were able to do this test, sometimes cognitively they can't do it. But if you can, and you understand that, you have a better idea of what you're dealing with that person with hearing loss. When you do a hearing test or you do earwax removal, always consider the timing, because and maybe for some it's not an issue. It could be any time of the day and they're fine with it. But others, they do better either in the morning or after lunch, it's nap time, it doesn't work and whatever it may be. So knowing your loved one or knowing that patient or client, knowing the best time, because sometimes these things, they're not, especially earwax. Some people, believe it or not, love earwax removal, but then there's some that absolutely do not love earwax removal.
Like
So,
my mom.
Yeah, some just do not like it at all.
Yeah,
So we just want to make we want to make them as comfortable as possible as well too. You
yeah.
know, it's important to get it out, but we want to keep them comfortable. So just those are things just to kind of consider in that way. So okay, say they have hearing loss. And I hear this and I see this all the time. So you think, okay, what am I going to do? So usually as a practitioner, we'll make, if someone has hearing loss, the first choice will usually make the recommendation to our hearing aids. Hearing aids can be way easier to deal with because you put the hearing aids in, you program them, and the person can be hands-free and they can go about their day doing what they need to do. So obviously in a care home, the patient is not putting the hearing aids in, the staff would put them in. And they'd wear them all day. So while they're eating or they're participating in any activities. That's where hearing aids can be ideal because the person can be hands-free, they're in the ears and it's done. But not everybody can handle hearing aids. I've met a few people over the years that are like, my mom, my dad absolutely will not wear hearing aids. They tried them, they don't like them, they don't like anything in the ear, whatever it may be, they just refuse to get hearing aids. So then there are other options as well too. So pocket talkers can be an option. Um, so a pocket talker is an amplifier. And the best way for me to describe, I don't know, Anne, tell me if you might agree with me, you might not, but a pocket talker to me kind of reminds me of back in the day of listening to like the little tape cassettes, the Walkmans, right? But the pocket talker itself is a bit smaller. So a Walkman, and then you've got a cord and then a headset. So you have the
Yeah.
headset that just goes over, or you can get the inserts, whatever it could be. I always find the ones over the ear can be easier. Now they're great to use, but you have to set it up for the person, okay? Because the volume sensitivity, it's very sensitive. Um, and it's not always something that someone can do and manage themselves to be able to take it out, put the headset on, turn the volume on, and then let's just say this is the pocket talker. It's got a little microphone, and then to be able to kind of point it in that direction. There's a good chance that's not going to happen. They're not going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know where they come in really handy is when you have that mom or dad or family member that doesn't want hearing aids, can't get them. And it's like, okay, why don't we get a pocket talker? And then every time I visit you, I'm going to put the pocket talker on for my own sanity. So we can have a nice visit and communicate with each other. Um, and usually that person they'll be accepting to that. It's, just they can't wear it all day and the staff won't have time to look after it. That's too much pressure on the staff because they'll drop, they'll fall, there'll be all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But a pocket talker, they cost about $225. You can get them at a hearing clinic or you can even get them at Amazon. So since this is being recorded, the brand I recommend are the William Sound ones. I think that's what they're called, William Sound. Um, and they're really good. So that's a second option as well too. Um, so I just don't want you to think all the time that it's just hearing aids. Hearing aids could be ideal, first choice, but there are other types of assisted listening devices that can help as well too. TV devices, they still sell them. Like someone has hearing loss, but they don't wear hearing aids, but we want to turn the TV down because the neighbors are complaining. You can get a special TV device that you can put like the Bose set or like headphones, or they still have them, the TV ears, these
Mm-hmm.
little things that go kind of underneath the chin and into the ears. Those could be devices as well too. So say someone's adamant and they're like, I don't want hearing aids. I don't want to, but when you leave after visiting, you know that part of their form of entertainment is watching television in their room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they'll do a lot of it. So if you can do anything to improve that, then why not, And those would probably cost a few $100s as well too.
Yep.
So when you're looking at hearing aids, so if someone calls me and they're talking about they want to get their mom or their dad tested, if I happen to answer the phone, usually the staff do, but if I talk to the families, I kind of usually want to know, have they worn hearing aids before, especially if there's like dementia. Um, because if someone calls me, and I've had this before, where they have the dementia, it's depending where they're at within the dementia. If they've worn hearing aids before, it's okay. Maybe because they have that memory muscle. You can put something in their ear and it's not foreign to them. They're okay with it because they're used to that, right? They've worn them for 5 or 10 years. But if they've never worn anything before in their ears and you're going to try to introduce something new, you're going to have challenges. That's where they may go missing, right? Or they get flushed down the toilet or they get left wherever. And,
Yeah.
so we got to find out a little bit more. Like, where are they? Like, is the dementia just mild and they're still living at home? Are they in a care home? Can someone help and assist them? I definitely recommend getting a cord and clip. Um, but I also want to give that family member realistic expectations. So they say, okay, I want to get my mom or dad tested. I want them to wear hearing aids and I want to improve their quality of life. I see how much they're missing out on. I really want to get these hearing aids. So I'll say, of course we can try it, but we have to be realistic as well too. If in the first year or the first week, pardon me, they're ripping them out of their ears and you can't keep them in, well, then we have to be realistic there and just um, kind of see if we need to figure something else out. So some families have done hearing aids, kind of like I said with the pocket talker. They only put them in at certain times when families visiting, you know. Um, so those are things to think about, like just to be realistic in that way. Um, if and also too, if you go somewhere and you're like, yeah, I'm going to get my mom or dad hearing aids, whether there's dementia or not, in a care home or whenever there's someone helping them, keep it simple. Like remember when you walk into a hearing clinic, they don't see where your mom or dad live or the challenges that they're faced day to day compared to like when I go into a home, I can see, I know the family that's involved, I know the care, I know I can kind of visually see what the challenges are. So taking those things into consideration. So for example, if I make a custom one-piece hearing aid, I'm going to make one red and one blue. The outside will be a skin tone color, but making it red and blue, that helps the family, that helps the care aides, that helps the staff that are putting them in. Like
Mhm.
care aides, I used to do volunteer teaching at Cap University, pardon me, for the care aides because they don't have any hearing aid training in their curriculums, so they don't know some of these simple things. So saying that, Anne, if you ever want me to do an in-service for your staff, I'm more than happy to do that. Keeping things simple as well too, like so keeping it red, keeping it one blue, so it helps the staff, it helps the family. Um, Having a cord and clip attached, that makes a big difference. It doesn't mean it's not going to guarantee that the hearing aids are, not going to get lost, but it definitely lessens the chance of it happening. Now, if you go into a clinic, they may not see this or think of this. I've met many people, they're like, what's a cord and clip? Because they've never been into a care setting helping the clients that live there. So they don't think of those things. So, and by all means, for any of you here, and if you're going to go somewhere, you're going to go to a hearing clinic, you want to go wherever because it's the place that you want to deal with, that's fine. If you ever want to call and ask me, okay, what are those things that you suggested before that I should ask? By all means, reach out to me because I'm happy just to kind of give you those reminders in that way. Just want to keep everything really simple. Um, and just one thing, and when you go to a hearing clinic, any clinic, even myself, and I give you a brochure of something, it still drives me crazy. All the manufacturers make these brochures. There's different levels of technology, but they make the brochures showing a senior on their iPhone, doing whatever. They're driving their car, they're in the restaurant with their girlfriends drinking wine, and I'm like, oh my God, and I'll say to my clients, I know that this is not your mom or dad in the brochure. I get that. Like, don't think that. And they put Bluetooth in all of the hearing aids now. It doesn't even cost more. It's just in there. But because sometimes you might think, are they trying to upsell me? No, it's just the way the manufacturers make the brochures. If you look on the websites, you'll see the exact same thing. Okay, so say mom or dad has gotten hearing aids or you're dealing with hearing aids. Um, so I like to kind of be realistic here when I do the in-services for things. Like the staff have a responsibility, but I do believe families have a responsibility as well too. The only time I'll say, okay, no, I need the caregivers to do more because I have a client that has no family. I'm dealing with a trust person and I've never met them and there's nobody else. So then I say to the staff, please help them. I'm going to show you how to clean them, you know. But for the most part, if there's family involved, I'd rather the family look after the cleaning of the hearing aids, and the staff should be responsible in the mornings to put them in the evenings to take them out. Um, and if they're battery operated, to change the batteries. Those are realistic things, you know. But maintaining, cleaning them, you're taking little mini computers and putting them in wet, waxy ears. They have to be cleaned, you know. There's little filters that are on them that need to be changed. And the reason I say the staff shouldn't do this, do you know how many different hearing aids there are and different filters? How would they know? And a lot of times, too, the staff can be scared to do too much because the families kind of scare them. The families will say, okay, I want you to do all this stuff, but remember how much these cost. Don't lose them. Don't whatever. And now the staff are scared and they're timid. They don't want to touch them, you know?
Mhm.
And in all fairness to the staff,
Yeah.
families will go into a care home and they bring everything. They bring the hearing aids. And the adult children know nothing about those hearing aids because they never went to the appointments with mom or dad. They don't know anything about the hearing aids. But then they kind of expect that the staff are supposed to know this, but they don't know it, you know? So
Yeah.
what I like to tell people like is, you know, I created something for Lynn Valley Care, like a kind of an intake form. Does your mom or dad wear hearing aids? What kind of hearing aids are they? You know, do you know how to clean them? Do you have cleaning supplies? I'll tell families, go back to the clinic where your mom got them from. Bring your phone, bring the hearing aids too. You don't even have to bring your mom or dad. Just bring the hearing aids and bring your phone and say, okay, look, it's hard to get my mom here. Can you please show me how to clean them? And can you give me a year's supply of cleaning supplies? And say, I'm going to videotape you cleaning them. And then you could have that video on your phone just to remind you to know or to show you how to do it in case you forget. And I promise you, in most cases, it's very simple. It takes
Mhm.
2 minutes, you
Yeah.
know? But if you could do that, I think that makes a big difference. And families should be involved, like as much as you possibly can. Like I saw someone today that I hadn't seen for almost 3 years, and she never really wore her hearing aids. And the son said to me, he goes, I'm so sorry. He goes, I dropped the ball. This was my first time meeting him in person. He never came to those first appointments. He didn't know any of this stuff. So nobody was cleaning his hearing aids, you know, or her hearing aids. She hadn't had her hearing tested before. There was no one kind of encouraging her, being her advocate. The staff get busy and they don't have time for this. And if you put a dirty hearing aid in someone's ears, dirty in the meaning that the little filter hasn't been changed, guess what? They probably don't work.
Yeah.
So if I put my glasses on and they're dirty, I can't see. If I can't think to clean them, if I don't have the whereabouts to know, okay, I got to clean them, I just want to take them off. So that's why sometimes seniors do that. They take them off, and some people go, oh, they just don't like their hearing aids. No, that's not necessarily the case. They just might not be hearing properly with them because they haven't been cleaned or reprogrammed and all of that. And that's something for where I kind of put that responsibility back on the families in that way. Um, just to know, because it just can't be the staff in that way. The staff can do the basic, you know, important, put them in, take them out, change the batteries if they're battery operated. And more importantly, if anything doesn't work, notify the family right away. Because sometimes what I see where families get frustrated is the care home will say, oh, the hearing aids were lost. Well, we haven't seen them for 3 months. And the parent, they're going, are you kidding me? Like, or it hasn't been working, or this problem's gone on for however long. So communication is also with anything, as we know, right? It doesn't even have to be hearing aids. So that's important. But families do absolutely need to be involved in that way.
Yeah.
So if you have someone that has hearing loss and we want to keep their mind active, we want to keep their quality of life up, we want to keep them engaged in things. So what do you do if they're in denial and they're rejecting everything that you've kind of put forth? Because it can happen, you know? And don't be surprised too, especially when you're dealing with cognition. One day they could say, "Yeah, I really want these. Yeah, I'm going to get them." And then I show up with the hearing aids, and it's like, "Who is this person? I don't want those things," you know? And you think, "Oh, I almost got there. She was almost going to get them," and then that's it. It gets rejected, you know? So these things absolutely can happen. So go back to thinking, okay, why don't I get a pocket talker, something like that, $200, and when I come to visit, we can put that on uh, mom or dad while I'm visiting. Keeping the ears clean. So once a year, look and check for wax. Anything you can do to just to keep the blockage from not being there, that could help. Other things that you can do, and I know it's tiring and it's exhausting, but it just you gotta sometimes think outside the box. And when someone's not wearing hearing aids and has hearing loss, these things, no matter what, are challenging. But using whiteboards, you know, to communicate and like some moms or dads, they're happy with that as well too. You know, just something so you can communicate with them. And another too is I don't know if you've ever used the voice to text apps. There are some out and they're free.
Yeah.
Double check them before you turn it over because they're not always that great. But that might be an option as well too. And one thing I'd recommend if you were to do that and your mom or dad liked that and that was working well, maybe invest in like not a phone, but like an iPad or something like that, just so the screen's bigger, you know, because obviously there probably could be vision issues as well too. Um, so
That's
these are
a
just
super good point, Jennifer. I have to say, I do talk to text on my notepad on my iPhone because yeah,
oh, perfect.
you can do voice notes, and
Yeah,
it works so well. I can blow the font up, and yeah, it works super well.
Yeah.
Good
perfect.
suggestion. Yeah.
I know I'm bad for this too. Like I'll be sitting, I'm like, why do I forget that we have these things, you know? But sometimes it is good to check depending what you have just to make sure, because sometimes the words can be off a little bit. Um, but anything that you can to just kind of help, so you can just not lose that communication, you know, just going back to if that person's not hearing. Um, if you're dealing with anyone right now and going through it, I don't have to tell you, you already know what the challenges are. Um, And sometimes there's nothing that you can do. You just have to accept it and just find other ways of what could. Sometimes it's just the little wins, right? Just finding something and trying different things as well too and see what works. Oh man, I think okay. So I think we're kind of near the end now. So financial resources, I did want to touch on this too. Now, people say, and I don't disagree, but I will kind of point something out. Hearing aids are so expensive. My mom's 85, my mom's 90. Okay, well, you don't know how long your mom's going to live for. Like, I'm going to tell you the other side of things that I see. I have some clients that are 105. We have one that's 107. You don't know. And I know someone, I remember when I first started, I think my client was 100 and he got hearing aids. He only had them for a year. But I remember when his son called and he goes, the son said, I don't care. He goes, I finally got to talk to my dad. His hearing loss was so bad, he was constantly yelling at his dad. So his voice was hurting, you know? But in his mind, he goes, I just felt it was worth it for that last year to be able to communicate, you know? Um, you don't need to get, you don't need expensive hearing aids, you know, you don't need all the bells and whistles. Um, Basic hearing aids, most likely, depending on the hearing loss, will suffice. If you want to know the difference between like a basic hearing aid and one that has premium features, like if I were to get hearing aids, I'd get the premium ones for me. Why? Because I'm in a lot of challenging listening environments. I go to restaurants, I do talks, I run a business, I deal with staff, I'm doing meetings. I travel, you know, so I'm in a lot of challenging listening environments. Therefore, I'd want the hearing aids to be adapting in those situations. For my clients that are living independently in a retirement community, I'll usually recommend more premium because they're playing bridge, they're going to the theater, they're going on bus trips, right? So they're in more challenging listening environments. I find because you're dealing with cognition, I find basic amplification works absolutely just fine. And what I'll say to my clients, if for whatever reason it doesn't, we can change it later. I'm not a salesperson. We can go up. Salespeople would say, go down later. No, if we need to do that, and only once did I ever have to make that change. But that's only because I had already recommended her a premium and she was in a retirement home. Okay. So those are that's something to think about with hearing aids. Now, who can pay for hearing aids? For third party in BC, we have WorkSafe, Veterans Affairs, First Nations, disability. So if someone's on, the reason I bring up the disability, because usually people know First Nations or veterans, if you were a vet or you worked in a noisy situation, not everyone's used to or understands a disability. So if they're on disability benefits through the ministry, they may qualify. So that's just a matter of you can call our clinic or any clinic, and we just need your mom or dad's or family member's PHN number and their name, and we call to just double check and confirm if they're eligible. Most people do not qualify for third party, realistically. So the next option is if you have extended health benefits. So you can check Blue Cross, you can check Sun Life and see and ask, okay, are we covered for hearing aids and a hearing test? Find those things out. What exactly are we covered for? And in fact, if you're looking after a family member's extended health, hopefully you could do it online now. Back in the day, I used to say to families, I'm like, ask them to send you a booklet. Find out everything that your mom or dad's covered for because they're an insurance company. They're not going to be offering this to you. So just ask them. So at least you can, utilize whatever benefits he or she may have. Last but not least, but this doesn't always help, but they are a medical expense. But if there's no income, then that doesn't necessarily benefit. There are now sometimes we get hearing aid donations. So we will donate hearing aids for someone that will just, they absolutely they can't afford hearing aids. If we have them in stock, you usually have to pay for the parts and you have to pay for the programming. So it could cost about $800. But it could be an option as well too, There's also a company, Wavefront. They will donate hearing aids. You're still paying for parts and hearing tests and stuff, but I think they only donate one. So a person could, so the one is better than nothing. For us, if we can donate, we'll donate two if we have them. So for those that can't afford, so there are options. They're not always the best options at times, but it's just good to kind of know this and know what's available as well too. And I feel like I talked a lot to you guys, so I apologize. I was just so worried. I didn't want to leave anything out, and I hope I didn't miss anything.
Good, lots of information.
There is. Do any of you have any questions?
Karen has a question for you. Karen, you can turn your mic.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mic on.
That's okay.
I put it in the chat, but one of the things that I've just learned about is a ministry. This is the Ministry of what is it? It's not income assistance, but economic development and poverty reduction has a special program for people of low income where they can support people to get aids of a variety of kinds, but including the hearing aids, if it is posing a health risk to them, and a medical practitioner, a medical doctor or a nurse practitioner puts that in writing that it's a risk, and that the solution is the hearing aids. Or anyway, so the you have to have the medical practitioner give a letter that specifies what the condition is that needs to be dealt with, and they're not looking for the diagnosis as much as the functional inability, and secondly, how the what is being proposed to be purchased is going to help the compensate or deal with the condition so that they're no longer at risk. and they recognize hearing as, or loss of hearing as, a disability.
Yeah, I've heard of that as well too. So that's for those that are still working, correct?
No, no, it is for anybody who's on low income, or doesn't have the financial ability to pay for a pair of hearing aids or whatever they require. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I have to look into that and see because I know there was something, but it was for those that were still working. So, and it's funny because you're the second person that has brought this up. So I think I need to look at this a little closer as well too, because it's not something that's really discussed or like, because I'm like, we should know about this in our industry, but none of us really do, you know? However, saying that, there's lots of things people don't know about when the government will be putting money out. People don't realize it, right? They don't really necessarily advertise it. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So I'm going to look at it this week or next week and try to get some more information on that.
I can probably send you the link because I've been going through this with my friends. So yeah.
If you could, that would be wonderful. Like my email is really easy. It's Jennifer and then the @ sign and then hearathome.ca. So HEARATHOME.ca. I appreciate that, Karen. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up as well, too. Because that's such a big challenge, you know? In like another reason why I'm surprised this isn't discussed more, because we know in BC that the majority of people, we do not have the funding like Alberta or Ontario have. Alberta and Ontario, for low income, their hearing aids are covered, you know, but we don't have it here. And it's such a shame when you think of so many people that are going without hearing. And especially when you think we talk about the increased risk of dementia and all sorts of other things, like the money that it's going to cost, I would imagine down the road later.
Yeah.
Is going to be a problem. But yeah, thank you for sending. I really need to look into this.
Going to add, the biggest thing that I noticed with Mom was her behavior started to become more and more aggressive. The more she was removed from her environment and not able to communicate with people, the more frustrated she'd get. And she did actually start to strike out. She's angry and frustrated. And that's the biggest change. I have to say, Jennifer, she's already doing better. It's not coming back. And I guess that's further to what you were saying. It's not coming back to where it was before.
Yeah.
But the one hearing aid we use, she was able to listen in a group setting and follow. I was watching her. It's a little thing, but it's exciting to see her join back in and be able to hear people. And for me, it's quality of life too. These are her friends that are trying to talk.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Pocket Talker came, we've tried it. It works great in an environment like even on this, where there's one person talking at a time, but not when there's a lot of.
Not in a group, because it'll amplify everything. They're just, they're like how old analog hearing aids used to be, where they make everything loud, right?
Yeah.
So, but one-on-one, it's perfect.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting. You just made me think of something. I remember when my grandma went to long-term care and I went to go visit her one day. So she was wearing hearing aids and she was always like joking and having fun and always relatively in a good mood. But this one day she was kind of grumpy, like, and I couldn't figure it out and snapping at me and whatever. I realized they hadn't changed the batteries in her hearing aids. So as soon as I put new batteries in and she could hear, her whole demeanor changed, you know, but she didn't have the word, like she didn't know to say, I'm grumpy with you. I'm short with you because I can't hear you. She couldn't figure that out. She just was. But once she could hear, everything had changed. And so, it does happen for sure.
Yeah, she's back and doing artwork and stuff again too. So thank you. It was more than
that's good. No, thank you for sharing that. I'm happy to hear that. You see that difference. So you see the quality of life.
Yeah.
You see the engagement, all sorts of things that you get the positives from hearing, you know?
Yeah.
But again, you got to be realistic. It's just because it will always have its challenges, right? Because one hearing aid, one is broken or is one lost.
We think she threw the one out because it wasn't working anymore.
Well, that's right. Yeah. So the one she has, you might want to get a cord and clip for it, a single one,
Yeah.
just to make sure, like, what if you're not there and she's participating in an activity, just in case.
Yeah, I should call you on that. I just been using it when I was there so that I can keep it. I mean, I don't know if we didn't touch on the cost of hearing aids. They are expensive. Mine were not expensive ones, and they were $4,000. So it's an expense when you're on a pension too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even just getting one replaced it's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, ours are under that though. They're just under 4,000. So yeah,
Yeah.
to get a new one would be about just probably 1,900 you'd look
Yeah.
at for one for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. But if you get a cord and clip something, but wait a bit,
Yeah.
just keep doing what you're doing where you're just putting it on her just to kind of get her used to it again.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's good. I'm glad
Okay.
to hear that. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, it was great.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can
Hi.
hear you. Yes.
My name is Grace. I do have parents 87 and 91. My dad's 91 is living in Fairhaven, and both have different level of hearing problems. So I might have missed the very beginning of your talk. By the way, it's a very good presentations, and thanks for all the information. What would you suggest me to do to start maybe getting some help? My father used to have some hearing aids, tried different hearing aids before, like decades ago when he was much more able, and he ditched all of them. Like he spent thousands of dollars on these and he never liked any one of them because like he said that there's too much different sounds and background noises is driving him crazy and is giving him like earrings.
Mhm.
And my mom's hearing has been deteriorating like noticeably in the past few months. So they both need separate types of help. So what would you suggest me to kind of start, researching or maybe getting some help?
So when did your dad, like, is this 10 years ago or 20 years ago that he tried hearing aids?
I would say even 30.
Oh, okay.
When
Okay.
he
So
was
then
much more able and he went
okay.
to different clinics and tried these things on, and he kind of lost interest using it 15, 20 years ago already. We
Fair
were
enough.
not as involved in his health issue at the time because he was a much more capable person at that time.
Of course, he's going and
yeah.
doing this. He probably wasn't wrong though, because analog hearing aids were still around 16 years ago, well, 17 years ago. So if he was trying analog hearing aids, so now hearing aids are digital, so they amplify at specific frequencies, right? Back in the day, when you needed someone's voice to be loud, they did that, but they made everything loud. So he probably would have been dealing with a lot of noise in that way initially. Um, Now with the hearing aids, for myself, when I program hearing aids, I program them at a lower level to start with because it's just too overwhelming. I'd rather them hear a little bit better, not perfectly right away, but hear better. And usually that little bit, everyone's happy with that, you know, because it can be too much stimulation, too much whatever, and uncomfortable. I can't imagine. Like, I don't like noise anyhow, let alone if I put something on I want to hear, but you're hearing all the other racket. And remember, a lot of people haven't heard certain things for a long time, especially that ambient noise. People walking, the sound of paper, you're reading a paper and just hearing all that. It sounds a lot louder than it is. However, what I would suggest doing is just have them both tested, like do it at the same time, the same day, and just look at them, and just look at the test results. And yeah, because they could be different, but they perhaps need somewhat of the same thing, not exactly. But the first thing you have to do is have a hearing test because that's what gives us like the appointment to see, okay, are we dealing with earwax? What you actually could do right now, Grace, is maybe get the first and foremost, see if you can get the ears checked for wax. If that's the case, you can get the ears flushed if there's wax in the ears. And then second, I would do a hearing test. It's not a bad idea if they're in the same place. Sometimes to do it, they're not.
But that's
okay.
fine. We can arrange for that. But where is the best place to get a hearing test? Because apparently the family doctor couldn't care less, to be honest.
I'm sorry to hear that. So you can, so if it's easy enough, is it easy? Are they mobile? Can you take them to a clinic?
Not for my father, but my mom, yes.
Okay, so if you can take them to a clinic, you can go somewhere that's close by. You know what I would do at the home? I would ask people where they went and were they happy. And don't just think a big chain. And I'm going to tell you, a big chain, you're going to be paying a lot more for those hearing aids. They're quite expensive, the big chains, you know. You're going to get probably way better service from a private independent clinic. But wherever she's living, or like if she can get out, just some of the people in the care home, if you ask the families where they went, or you could do a mobile service. So that's what I do. So I go in and everything's done at their home and you don't have to go anywhere. So for some, it's less stress on people, you
Right.
know?
So you operate or you own like here from home, right? So
Yeah.
you
So
do
I've
offer
had
mobile services.
100%. That's how I started off. So I've
Mhm.
had the private practice for 16 years. So, and that's how I started off, and that's all I do are mobile services. So we have a clinic in North Vancouver, but I manage it because I own it, but I have a
Mhm.
practitioner that's in there. Because we try to keep people with the same people. People don't want to, not just seniors, anyone. You don't want a different person always coming to see you, right? You want the same person. So I do all the mobile stuff. So I
Mhm.
go to homes, hospitals, retirement homes, care homes.
Mhm.
So just to this, sometimes doing stuff at home can ease the stress. You know, this morning I was out at UBC and doing the hearing aid fitting, and the daughter's there. The daughter's exhausted. It's my second time meeting her. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so much better. I'm so glad you're here. I couldn't imagine." But I was also very patient with her mom. Her mom has dementia. We had to do earwax removal. Not everyone
Mhm.
likes earwax removal, right? So
Right.
having patience, not rushing, not whatever, like, but I'm used to those. Those are my clients, and that's what I'm used to, right? So, um, but yeah, so you be the judge of it as well too. Sometimes just doing things at home, whatever it may be, not just hearing anything, just having someone come to you eases the stress on the family, the person having it, but then the family members as well too. Because
Right.
sometimes taking your mom or dad to an appointment can be stressful on you,
So,
right?
if it's something from your firm, your service, we can get onto the website to get.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And you could email me directly after as well too. And you and I can talk more on the phone privately if you want, and I can
Okay.
answer all the questions and get the details.
Okay.
Um,
Perfect. Yeah.
so yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
You're very welcome. And think too, if there's other questions, just write them down and I'm happy to go over with them with you
Okay.
after for sure.
Okay. You bet.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Well, that's great. It's been really helpful. Thank you. I still heard things that I didn't hear, and we've had a couple conversations, so that's terrific. And I do have to emphasize that I've seen a big difference in Mom just in the last month. Just it's only been 2 weeks, I think, since you did her ears. So progress. We'll see if we can get on to the next step. But thank you very much for coming and doing this for us. It's really
Oh,
helpful.
you're very welcome. It's my
Yeah.
pleasure. And again, too, Anne, if you want to do any like in service, I could do it in person, or if you want to do something on Zoom too, because I don't mind if you videotape, like you record it, because I know staff work different shifts and stuff. So maybe we touch on the basics of hearing aid care, just how to best support,
Yeah.
how to approach families, how to document things, just little things like that, just those reminders, because I know the staff don't unfortunately always have that training. They usually learn from a more experienced person that if they're willing to kind of help and support them, you know. So anyhow, keep that open because I'm happy to do that. And for any
Thank
of
you.
you at any time, if you have questions, you have my email. By all means, reach out at any time. And if you go to another hearing clinic, I won't be offended. Just still reach out if you have questions. I'm happy to help. That's what I like to do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
It's great.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much. That's
Okay,
great.
bye, you guys. Take care. Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks
Bye.
everybody. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll see you next month.
Bye.